There. It says record. It says record.
Okay, good.
Right.
Pretty good. Good morning, everybody. My name is Shelby Britt, for those of you who have not had a chance to meet me yet. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be discussing your PTS, your O&Ps, what to expect now versus how the O&Ps used to be ran. There's been some major differences in regards to how the DMEs are conducting them. And we're going to go over from the very beginning aspect of how you get registered for your O&P all the way up to and including the actual taking of the tests themselves. The first thing that will end up happening is, how many of you have registered right now for your O&Ps? You know when your O&P test is going to be?
No.
You don't. Okay. But you have registered for your O&Ps. Have you got your instructors, your DMEs? Have they been identified yet? You know who you're going to be testing with?
Not for sure.
One. Okay, Charles, that's because you're retesting, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So in a roundabout way, you kind of went through it once already, and now we're going to go back again. So you have a little bit of a better understanding than most of the other people in the class in regards to what to expect. For those of you who have not been through that route yet, let me walk you through exactly how it's going to go. Like I said, at any point you have any questions, feel free to stop me and ask me about it, and I'll do my best to answer it and hopefully alleviate some of the misconceptions that people have about it, because students have a tendency to blow this thing up and turn it into some kind of real scary exercise, and in reality, it's very simple, very straightforward, provided you know what to expect when you go into it. The first thing's going to happen is you're going to register for your O&P. After you have registered for your class, you submit your registration request, you're going to be passed out to a DME. The DME is going to get your name on a list, and then you're going to have a meeting with them. They're going to sit down in that meeting, they're going to get all of your pertinent information. They're going to get your driver's license. They're going to ask you just all kinds of questions. And basically what it boils down to, at that point what they're doing is they're creating your initial FAA file. That file is going to follow you through the FAA from the time that you sit down and fill out that first piece of paper throughout your entire A&P career. It's always going to be there. That's one thing that's different now than the way it used to be. And we'll go over in a few minutes some more of the particulars about it, but it's basically a way the FAA has set it up now to identify you from start to finish, so that it doesn't matter where you go to take your O&Ps, anything else, they will already know where you've been in the past, what you've taken, what you failed, what areas you need to be retested on. All that comes into play. But that all starts and originates with your initial meeting with the DME. Then, like I said, you create your FAA file. They fill out all the necessary paperwork, and at that point, they will give you a list of different dates that are available for O&Ps to be conducted. You will take and you'll be able to put your name down on a particular date, and it's normally first come, first served. So once you have your O&P date established and you're set, you're pretty much committed at that point. Because especially right now, the way that it's set up with the DMEs are only allowed to test one applicant at a time, there really is no rescheduling. If for some reason that date doesn't turn out to work for you in the future, then the odds are you're going to have to be rescheduled for testing the following semester or during the mini-semester. You're not going to be able to redo it during the semester that you were wanting to have happen. Once you have your O&P test dates established and set, let's now look at what actually takes place during your O&P. We're going to get rid of a lot of how do you put this? I remember back when I went through mine, it was almost a game from the people who had gone through ahead of us to come back and tell us about the nightmares associated with O&Ps. And it was all designed to get our anxiety levels up so high that we were just virtually scared about our O&Ps. Well, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be going over them not the way that they laid them out to you. We're going to get rid of all those false illusions and deal with them exactly the way that it actually takes place. It's my opinion that if you're able to go in and know up front what to expect, your anxiety level is going to drop tremendously. As your anxiety level drops, your ability to be able to concentrate and focus on what you need to focus on will improve, and you'll do much better on the O&Ps themselves. Okay? When you first step in for your O&P, the first part is going to be your orals. You're going to sit down, you're going to, the DME is going to have an FAA file that's already been downloaded. That file from the FAA lists every question that they're going to ask you during your orals. It's going to also have all of the practical exercises that you will be assigned to. In other words, your whole O&P test is all going to be included in that one file that the DME has at that point. So the second that they open up that file, that's your commitment level right there. That's what you will be tested on. After you do your orals, your actual orals, then you'll do what they refer to as the paperwork practicals. That's your 337s, your mathematic problems, anything that would have to do with paperwork type applications will be taken care of in the classroom at the same time right after you finish your orals. The reason being they want to finish up everything that's classroom oriented before you go down into the hangar and start your actual physical practicals. That leads us to the physical practicals themselves. That's going to be things like your safety wiring, your hose fabrication, all those kinds of things. The areas that require you to physically do something from mechanical, or as Gary Morrison likes to say, from how do you put it, mechanicking standpoint, that's where you're going to go down and do your mechanicking, is during your physical practicals. Let's look at the oral exercise itself. That was an outline of what's going to take place. The orals, though, we're going to look at each one of those different areas independently. In your oral exams, you have a possibility of 1,657 different questions that they could ask you. Oh my God, how am I ever going to get through those 1,650? Thought you said this is supposed to make me feel better. Well, in reality, as daunting as that looks, it actually is a lot simpler than that. Because from these 1,657 possible questions that the FAA could be asking you, we've narrowed it down to 602 that are the probable questions. That means that we basically cut over 1,000 questions out of the mix. You're left with 602 that are possible, that there is a good probability your questions will come from that question pool. How do we come up with these 602 questions? Well, that's because you're going to be tested over 32 different sections. Everything from basic electricity to shop practices, fuels, servicing, engine run-ups, all those kinds of things, hose fabrication. It's at 32 different sections, and in those 32 different sections, you will have a minimum of 4 questions in each section. You have to answer, if you go with the 32 sections with 4 questions in each section, that means you could actually get through your orals only answering 128 total questions out of that pool of 602. Now, if you missed one of those, you have to have a 75% pass rate. There has been a change. Used to, the instructors, the DMEs, could actually take and ask you up to 10 questions. And out of the 10, you could miss 3. Now, they've changed it to where they can ask a maximum of 7 questions, and you can miss 2. Okay? Again, 75%. If you get 75% of the questions right, you move on to the next section, and you can progress on with your orals. Any questions about that? No? Okay. The paperwork practicals, the actual practicals themselves, divided into two categories. You have paperwork and you have physical. The paperwork practical is, like I mentioned before, that's everything that has to do with you sitting down and figuring out mathematic problems, you're doing your physics problems, calculating the volume of a cargo container or a baggage compartment, logbook entries, all of those things, weight and balance problems, all of those come under the paperwork practicals. The second type of practicals is the ones that require you to use your toolbox. Okay? Better examples of the paperwork practicals, you've got your 337s. Now here's what will end up happening. Virtually everybody at one point or another is going to end up having to do a 337. Now the question becomes whether that 337 is actually going to be for a repair, or is it going to be maybe an STC? Based on which type of 337 you fill out, there are specific phrases and wordings that have to be incorporated into the back of your 337 to make that correct when you fill it out. Unfortunately, for the most part, most of you, when you went through your FARS class, that was so long ago, you've forgotten half of the details about the back of the 337. So we'll be going over those so to refresh your memory so it doesn't hit you out of the blue. Physics, different types of machines. You get into Charles' law, Boyle's law, Pascal's law. Any of those sound familiar? Yeah, somebody going, oh, yeah, it sounds familiar, but I don't remember what they were. Here's the saving grace aspect of this, is the fact that once you have finished your oral part of your O&P that we discussed a few minutes ago, you are now open and subject to having the availability of all of your resource materials. So if they ask you something about Boyle's law and you can't remember, you think that's some kind of sore that comes up on your foot, then you can look in your reference manual, you can look in your training manual, your FAA handbook, look up that in the section and actually read the entire section on Boyle's law. And in most cases, the problem that they're going to be asking you to compute, to calculate, will come right out of the book. And it's one of the examples that they use in the book to teach the class in that particular area. So all you have to do is take it, substitute in a few numbers, and you're good to go. The biggest problem most people have, though, is they tend to try to do it from memory. Don't go into this test educated beyond your intelligence. Now, do you know what I mean when I say that? You go into it convinced you know all the answers, and as a result of that, you don't take the time to look up the necessary reference materials to ensure that you have, in fact, the right answer before you move on to the other one. Because if you miss any of these, you fail your O&P. The way it was set up before, you could miss some of your practical items. As long as it was not what they refer to as a core item, you could miss some of them and still pass your O&P. Now there are no more core items. Every practical that you do during your O&P is considered a core item per se. You miss any of them and you fail your O&P. It gets a little worse though. You say, okay, well that's all right, I'll just retest in the spring and hopefully I'll get a better test. Unfortunately, it does not work that way. What happens is when you're taking your O&P for your general, you will have 6 practicals. Your airframe, you will have 7. If you miss a practical item and you fail it, when you go back for your retest, instead of having 6 in general, you would now have 7, because you will automatically, on your retest, get the item you failed, along with 6 new items. And it does, well, I just won't do my test here. I'll go somewhere else. I'll go find me another DME across town, and that's where I'll get my test done, and it'll all be brand new from scratch. No. Because they still have to download the test from the FAA, and the first thing on that new downloaded test will be the area that you failed in your last attempt. So once you have failed an item, it tracks you like a bad penny. It just never goes away. It's going to be right there. So eventually you're going to have to figure out how to accomplish that particular task, regardless of anything else, before you can move on forward. Okay? Any questions about the physical part of it? Physical practicals. Okay. There's 3 things that, and this sounds very simplistic, but in reality, it's also very true. The biggest single reason I have seen most people fail their O&Ps is because they have, how would you put this? They let their anxieties get the best of them, and everything starts to snowball. They make one simple mistake, and instead of having just that one area that they have to go back and retest later, it compounds into other areas, and the next thing you know, you're messing up your next practical item, you're messing up the next practical item, and eventually it gets to the point where it just seems like it's hopeless. There's nothing you can do. Before, the way it was set up was, if you failed a particular section, the DME had the opportunity at that point to just say, okay, here, let's just stop the test, and because really you need to go back and you look at these other areas again. And it wasn't such a demoralizing aspect. Today, however, because of the fact that you're paying such a large amount for the test, you will, in fact, take the entire test. The DME cannot stop the test unless you fail in a particular area, or you yourself personally request that the test be stopped. Otherwise, you are paying for the experience. You are going through, and you will continue to be tested in each section until such time as you either pass that section or you fail it. My point in all this is just relax with it. Relax with it. Especially when it comes to your oral questions. It's very easy for your DME to ask you a question. You get all frustrated, your mind goes blank, you don't know what you're going to do next, and you just blow it. Here's a simple tip that you can do. You can't take anything in with you to do your orals. However, you can ask the DME for a paper and pencil. They cannot reword the question. Used to, they could reword it and make it to where, if you didn't understand a particular aspect of the question itself, they could reword it hoping that you could understand what it was they were asking for. They can't do that now. But what they can do is they can repeat the question. In a few moments, when this thing's over, when the introductory part of this class is over with, we're going to be going over the PTS, we'll be going over the oral questions. You're going to find that the oral questions that you're going to be studying are going to be virtually word for word what's going to be on your test. What you can do during your orals is you can ask the DME to repeat the question. You can write the question down. And there's something about being able to visually see that question on paper stimulates the mind, and you remember what the answers are. But you've got to relax. Relax, study, and learn how to do the necessary research for your O&Ps, which is what we're going to do. Because one of the main thrusts of this study group is going to be, I'm going to teach you how to read. You're looking at me and you say, well, I know how to read. Yes, You know how to read, but the problem though that I've found is that everybody, when they first start doing this, because we're dealing with technical issues, they skim through the reading and they overlook the important parts that will result in you either passing or failing that particular part of the practical. So I'm going to be going over with you, breaking it right back down to the basics, and teaching you how to read your manuals again so that you'll be able to walk through. Provided you have the availability of the manual, and you can sit there and follow it step by step.
Okay. There's like 3 of us down there. We're looking for you.
You looking for me?
Yeah, I
Well,
will.
this is where I am.
All right.
Okay. Provided that you have that available to look at, and you can follow the instructions and you can read, there shouldn't be any reason why you should fail a practical. If you think about that for a second, doesn't that make sense? That's what we're dealing with. So we're going to be doing that. Bottom line, relax, study, learn how to do your research. You get those 3 things done, you will be able to pass your OMP. It's not going to be a big deal. We just have to ensure that you do those things first. Questions? Nobody? Yep.
Yeah, you were saying the 600 questions, is that just for generals, or is that general and airframe combined?
At general and airframe combined. Now, actually, the 1,600 question pool that's there, the 600 have been pulled from that 1,600. But in your packet that you picked up when you first came in, that GNA packet, the 600 questions that you have the possibility of being asked are included in that. Okay. Yeah.
When you were earlier saying that once you get done with the oral part and get to like the paperwork, like with the 337 and Boyle's Law, what book were you referencing to that you can look at? Was that the AC 43 you were referencing?
No. FAA handbook. You know your Jefferson book?
Yeah.
Jefferson General?
Yeah.
And for both general and airframe, you got that Jefferson handbook. Well, all that is, the FAA has that very same book. Jefferson puts their cover on it and sells it to you. Okay? You will have the FAA version of that. And it'll be available. So if you remember back, you go to chapter 1 in your general book, and it starts talking about machines and about physics and math and all those. Well, you have the same opportunity and availability of all those there.
Will the DME provide that to us?
Yes.
Okay.
You're only allowed to use information that is provided by the DME. The DME will only use information that the FAA says that they can provide to you. That's going to be your manuals. It's going to be your 4313. You've got your mechanics dictionary. You got that little green book that has all the different formulas and glues and everything. Some of y'all haven't seen that? Okay. They're all there. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll go down and I'll pick up one from my office because they are available. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. We're going to cut this off right now. And then we're going to go for a few minute break. We'll come back and we'll get started on the rest of it. Okay?